Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
All right, welcome in, everybody. Sports Daily here on a Thursday. Glad to be with you. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, the day after a really, really horrible situation that we'll try to navigate the best we can for you today. We'll try to also do other fun things today, too, which I'll just be perfectly honest with you is a really weird thing to do. But we will because we can't do otherwise. We'll have Shocker Talk today. Our K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald joins us today. So plenty of college hoops to talk about, some interesting stories around the NFL, I think, yesterday that we'll spend a little time with today, and maybe a couple of the things that would make Chiefs fans happy from the parade yesterday we can get into as well. The KFH hotline is open for you one way or the other, 869-1240. Glad to be able to provide that to you. We've got some giveaways today, a chance to see some postseason college basketball up in Kansas City. We'll get you the details for that later. We'll get you some HTO, all kinds of good stuff coming for you. Welcome in. Tommy, how are you this morning?
I'm good, ready to get into it today. I know we've got a lot on the program to get to and talk about. Obviously a tough day yesterday, and I know that's where we're going to start. And definitely the story that's dominated everything over the last almost 24 hours. So that's a big reason why we're here today.
Yeah, look, I think that you go through. So the strange thing for us is just, to look through it. Like, it's really difficult to have that looming while you try to also have other things. Like, and it was difficult on TV with that yesterday. It's difficult even still with the radio today, because, every time you get details or information, it just like absolutely deflates the room again. We're going through yesterday, the initial reports. It's a very strange sequence. As I'm walking into the newsroom, right when I'm walking in, I look up and I see Mick Schaefer in his coverage because we were carrying it live. And I see just a look of confusion among the three anchors they had up there. And then they show an overhead shot of people like running away. And I'm like, oh my God. And I immediately, I text Tommy, I said, I think something bad's happening at the celebration. It was right when I walked in the door. And so like that moment was when all of us realized it. And then so we call our reporter who was right there. He was about 20 yards from where this happened. And he was like, yeah, guys, I can see like a gun in a pool of blood. Something's, and we're like, okay. And so then it goes like DEFCON on everything, and we just go nuts. And you start to get details. Well, at first you're like, okay, one person's been shot, and then you hear a few people, and then all of a sudden it's at least 15 people have been shot, and then it's 22 people have been shot, and a bunch of them are kids, and you're just thinking, oh, like Children's Mercy's involved. So it's been a really quickly escalated. We still don't know a lot about the circumstances. We have seen, stories and videos of heroism, of fans tackling, suspects and getting guns out of the situation. Social media is wild in these days. It's so strange to watch these things unfold because you get so many firsthand views of things, and it sucks. It's really difficult. This is now, I believe, the third championship celebration in a row of the major sports where we've had somebody get shot. We had it at the Nuggets celebration. I think at the Rangers celebration, somebody was shot in a parking garage. At now this one, and it's just like, my God, like what? Like, why can't we just go have a parade and have fun? And, I don't know what the aftermath of it is. And I don't even know what the circumstances of this one are. I don't even know that it was anything sinister or targeted or anything like that. But, people with guns started shooting those guns in a large crowd of people. And 22 people are now shot and at least one person's dead. And it really sucks. And I don't know what the answer to any of that is. I just know that it just is this thing that slaps us in the face again. And I hate it. And it's hard to look at anything else that's happened. I try to find the great things that happen in those moments, the first responders that rush in, hearing stories of how the Chiefs players were trying. And apparently this was much closer to the Chiefs team as people realized to begin with. but consoling young people, helping them, trying to get them through. Everything's chaos for everybody, honestly. And to see people, in the and it look, it doesn't surprise me at all to see a couple of citizens take down a potential suspect. Like I think that's what a lot of people would do. And those kinds of things are reminders of the best of us as we get a reminder of the worst of us. So it's a wild thing to even have to talk about, but here we are.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot that I can say that is new, that other people have not already been saying, whether it's on radio or television or social media or just in conversations. I'm not going to break anything new. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to say something that is enlightening that nobody has ever heard before, because it's all been said. The thoughts and prayers have gone all out, and it's not. This is unfortunately nothing new. It doesn't make it any less devastating, but it's nothing new in our country, and that's what makes it the most devastating, I think. I think about it. I'll tell you kind of where you talked about walking into the newsroom. I'll kind of tell you where things were at for me during that time, and a little bit prior to that. So my wife and I was here at work. My wife was at home, and we both had the parade coverage on TV. I'm working. I've got it on in the background. I'm kind of paying attention, but my wife has been incredibly locked in to everything Chiefs related, and especially with the Travis Kelsey Taylor Swift thing. Totally locked in, was really locked into the game. She followed Patrick Mahomes going to Disneyland and watched all of that, and all the different press conferences. And so she was glued to the TV watching the parade coverage yesterday. And at one point she texted me and we're watching it together. And this was before anything had happened. And she said something to the effect of, I really wish that we had taken our boys to this today. We have a toddler and we have a baby. And I responded and I said, man, that would have been awesome. Would have been awesome for us to be able to go up there, and share in that with them. And it was less than an hour later that all of this was going down. And in my mind, I thought to myself, there were so many families that took their kids to this, to see their heroes, took their kids to be able to go and enjoy and revel and celebrate in this Super Bowl victory. And all I can think about now is, thank God we didn't go. Thank God we weren't there, for that. And that's what has stuck with me over the last 24 hours. And to a point to where not only did I think, I'm glad we didn't go, but I also thought, I'm not sure I would ever want to do anything like that. I don't know. Moving forward, I don't know if I would ever want to go to a large gathering like that again. After this. So, again, I've got nothing groundbreaking to say other than just it's extremely devastating that this has happened. It's completely, ruined what is absolutely a joyous time.
Yeah, and I look, my wife had the same reaction. She has it, before in places like that. I just like what's so disappointing to me is initially it looks like this wasn't not that this would make it any better or worse. It's just it makes it feel like the likelihood is higher that these weren't some targeted attacks. We don't think, and
Right.
neither were the other ones at celebrations. They were just gun violence spilling over into a large group of people. Like that's what makes it so frightening, because it's like, well, we really do. Like, we sit in the newsroom on a scanner and there's somebody shot, feels like 6 times a day.
Yeah.
And it's like, what, like it just really does become this numbing thing that you're like, well, I won't put myself in a situation where people are shooting at each other. And then these things happen. And then it's like that, that fake barrier we put up just comes crashing down. I hate it. The thoughts and the prayers, I think, are very important. I don't think they're enough to solve these problems. I don't know the answers to solve the problems. But it's happened. And now we'll have, probably a lot of really great things happen as people step in to try to help, just as we did in the immediate aftermath. And if we get in any information today on what's happening, any information on motive or suspects or anything like that, we will pass it along to you. We'll try to toe this line, and bear with us as we have that situation existing, but also giving you something else today too. So just bear with us on that. We'll have to make a couple of awkward transitions probably, but we'll do our best. 869-1240. We're going to take a break to have a not awkward transition and give it a little breather, and we'll come back. We'll talk about some other things around the NFL that happened yesterday that have nothing to do with the violence. Some of those things even happened before the violence in the same place. We'll have it next for you on Sports Daily.
Chiefs.
The commercials are over.
Yo, I haven't got all day.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH, Albracht and Castor. All right, Tommy. So before the tragedy yesterday, a couple of things happened for the Chiefs, I think, that are notable for fans. One, Steve Spagnuolo, as we mentioned here, got an extension. Doesn't surprise us, but is, like step one. If it was even a step that was in question, I don't think it was. That will help the defense. The other more interesting thing, I think, that came of it is Chris Jones essentially saying he's not going anywhere. Now, I can't remember if he has said the same thing in the past on a stage like that. He certainly has, like on social media, and then things turned last off season. It did feel to me like that was a little more definitive yesterday. I don't know if he has any insight on how this will go. I don't know if he was just caught up in the moment of the celebration, or if that's even insight we should take anything from, but he said it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at least from his perspective, I think this year has been definitely eye-opening for Chris Jones. I think knowing the way that he is treated in Kansas City, the way that he's been able to build his career over the time that he's been with the Chiefs, and I think that there's a part of him that he understands that even though he is one of the best defensive tackles in the National Football League, that he's got an opportunity to continue to play with the dynasty and continue to win those rings and go for a three-peat. And who knows how many more years he's got left. But I think that, and you pointed this out yesterday as we were talking about the different players that used to play for the Chiefs that were on social media over the weekend talking about how happy they were for their former teammates. I think that there's a part of Chris Jones that probably doesn't want to be like those guys. He doesn't want to be like a Tyreek Hill or Tyrann Mathieu or Colin Saunders or, any of these other players that spent time with Kansas City, saw the greatness of the franchise, and then went off somewhere else. And now they're on the sideline, not winning championships. So I think that's part of it for Chris Jones. Now, the other side of it is he's still got the same representation that basically botched the negotiations last year. So hopefully they've learned their lesson. I do think that they're going to be able to obviously get interest from other NFL teams, but I do think the better situation for Chris Jones, obviously, is to stay with Kansas City for the rest of his career.
I think that's what he wants to do. If that's what he will do, I guess are two different things. I think that well, look, it doesn't have to get as complicated as it did last year because he's just a free agent, right? Like it does, like the holdout, all the messiness of it. He's either going to accept a contract for the Chiefs or he's going to accept a contract for somebody else. That part of it, I do think, is simpler, and maybe that makes the process easier to digest. It'll certainly be faster than it was last year. The thing for the Chiefs that will be really interesting is they have to do all these things sort of in tandem, right? I have laid out like a priority list, and it starts with Snead, and then it goes to left tackle, and then it goes to Jones. I don't know if they view things the same way, but the reality is they all kind of have to happen together, right? You have to know what you're doing with one to know what you can do with the other. That's what makes it so hard. But the good thing is I believe they're allowed to negotiate with their own guys like right now. So you can know what Snead needs. And again, I think everybody feels like that's got to be the priority. I think the best chance for the defense to maintain is to have Spags and that secondary intact with Reed and those two corners.
McDuffie, yeah,
that will
for sure.
Yeah, that will probably happen. And then you have to sort of prioritize everything, but you can't do that unless you know where everybody's head's at, right? Is Donovan Smith willing to come back again on like a 1-year small deal just to keep it together? And then does that free up money? What is Patrick Mahomes going to be able to do to provide salary cap relief? Because he'll almost certainly do it if he can. According to people that study this stuff, this past season was the year that the greatest cap burden for Mahomes. And so all of that stuff goes hand in hand, but it seems like the main core will be back. And it's interesting as you hear people talk about the offseason, I think there's this general feeling that, most of what they have will be back. I don't know that I think the same thing because they have so many free agents, right? Like Drew Tranquil and some of these, guys that they brought in on discounts last year were such integral parts of the defense. Those are guys who have not been paid. Are they really, it's different for Chris Jones and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes who have made their fortunes already. Some of these guys haven't, right? And so are they really going to be willing to do, those same types of things like Snead? Xavier Snead hasn't been paid yet. Xavier Snead. God, that's a throwback.
There you go. Yeah.
Legarius Snead hasn't been paid yet. So I think it's more complicated than people are letting on. I think it will be a great challenge for the front office this offseason. I heard somebody yesterday, I think it was on the JR Sport Brief, interviewing a former executive yesterday on the way home. And that it was an old, executive to some capacity in the Bills front office. And he just sort of spoke about, because we all know the cliche of, you got to get it done on a rookie quarterback contract, which is silly because we haven't had a, quarterback on a rookie contract win a Super Bowl in now 5 years since Mahomes did it. But it really does speak to the restrictions it put. And his point was you have to get the draft right. If you're going to pay your quarterback, you have to be great in the draft. And the Chiefs have been. I mean, they really have been. You think about two of their key contributors this year offensively, Pacheco, Rice, neither one of those guys were first-round picks. A lot of these players that, have been critical have been their first-round picks. We'll see about Felix Anudike-Uzomah, but they have hit on a lot of meaningful players in the middle part of the draft, and they have to continue to do that. Now, I have confidence they will because they have. They have a history of doing that, right? They haven't always been great at the very front end, but they've been really good in the middle, And so they do have to do that because those are the most affordable players you can find.
That's got to be the formula, and that's been the formula long term for Kansas City. And it's basically you draft well, and then you try to supplement the remaining positions and the needs that you have with team-friendly free agents. And some of them are probably going to be veterans, that you're taking a swing on, or others might be projects or whatever. But that's really been the strategy because, as we all know, so much money is tied up in other places, specifically Patrick Mahomes. This is not a team that typically will spend on free agents. We've seen that from Brett Veach over time. Really, the only time that we've really kind of seen bigger contracts going out in free agency with the Chiefs have been on the offensive line. And that was Orlando Brown initially, and then Jawan Taylor last year. But really, other than that, I mean, you never see Kansas City spin big on a wide receiver. You never see them spin big really anywhere defensively. I mean, I know that they brought in Drew Tranquil, they brought in Charles Omenihu. Those were free agent signings. But again, those guys are not garnering a ton of money at the very top of the market. So that's always been the strategy. You mentioned the way that, Kansas City drafts. And really, in the last, 5 years or so, and I would say the only swing and miss in the draft was maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round. That was maybe the only miss, I would say. And not that he's been a bad player, but just he hasn't been a first round, living up to those first round expectations, I would say, overall in the course of his time in Kansas City. So really, other than that, I think that, Brett Veach he's known for drafting pretty well and finding diamonds in the rough later in the draft. They're going to have to do that again this year. And as long as this team is together in the way that it is, they're going to have to continue to draft well. I'm not just talking about next year, but in the years to come, that's going to be a major priority.
It is. And that's why when everyone, says, oh, they'll be back, all these, I'm like, yeah, they probably all won't be back. They can't. So then it's, do you bring, if you can get Snead, Jones, and one of the linebackers, I think you've done a really good job because I don't think you can get Gay and Tranquil. There's just too many guys. You're going to run out of dollars unless you get everybody just wanting to come back to go for three. I do think left tackle is the most frightening of the openings. I think even more than wide receiver. So I would suspect that they will, outside of Snead, just whether it's through the draft, and it could be, or a free agent, which is more likely, in my opinion. They'll attack there. They could also trade draft picks, which we know they're also not scared to do, to go after somebody they feel like could be. Now, they haven't necessarily been great at that, right? They haven't done that well. Orlando Brown Jr., Frank Clark, guys that helped them win Super Bowls, don't misunderstand, but I think that were overpays. And then, Jawan Taylor, who certainly, I think, right now, unless he can play left tackle, that's not what they gave him a bunch of money, not to come play right tackle.
Right.
So, and I don't know that went particularly well this year.
And, I was looking at it the other day as far as the free agent left tackles that are out there right now. And really there are 4 main ones. And actually Donovan Smith is the youngest out of all 4. You've got Tyron Smith, who's 33, Dwayne Brown, who's 36, and Cornelius Lucas, who's 32. And then Donovan Smith is 30. So, right now you've got, a guy that played left tackle for you last year. And was Donovan Smith a great left tackle? No.
Yeah, he was all right.
He got the job done. I mean, I think that I think Kansas City realized in the offseason that as much as they wanted Jawan Taylor to move over and they're paying him to do so, for whatever reason, that transition wasn't happening well, and they had to go get a stopgap in Donovan Smith. And so for what they asked him to do in kind of the 11th hour before the year started, I think he did an okay job.
I agree. And remember that they've now won 2 Super Bowls with Orlando Brown Jr. and Donovan Smith. Those aren't the best tackles in the league. They're good. They're good, right? They're okay. So yeah, I would love if they could get Smith back and that made financial sense. I think he probably played himself into a bigger contract. Would be my guess. If Orlando Brown got paid what he got paid by Cincinnati, I would imagine Donovan Smith will be pretty desirable on the open market. But we'll see. They have big decisions to make, but I maintain all the time, you also have to be careful because offensive linemen you cannot let go next offseason. I mean, you've got a situation. When is Joe Tooney up? I think he's up at the same time, but you've got a situation where your entire interior line are all going to need to get taken care of at the same time. With Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, that's almost as important as your bookends because he scrambles so much. You just can't let that pressure come up the middle. And as he ages and as Travis Kelce ages and some of this stuff, you always want to be able to run the ball. Those interior linemen have got to be taken care of. Like, to me, there is, as pressing as Snead. Like, you can't let those guys walk away. Those are, and I'm talking about Humphrey and Smith, and I can't remember when Tooney's up. And he's getting a little older, but especially Humphrey and Smith. And it will be what sucks is like the parades usually, and I'm talking about the good part of the parade yesterday, not the bad part. But what's unfortunate is that that's usually like the last time everything's happened. And then you get into the business of football right away and it gets really complicated again. And it's a harsh thing that happens, but it's always, guys are happy and saying they want to be back and doing everything when they're on the field celebrating, hoisting the Lombardi. And then when the dollars get involved, reality sets in.
Yeah, I wonder, there's another guy that's on the market right now, left tackle wise, Jonah Williams from the Bengals. And if you remember when Orlando Brown went to the Bengals, Jonah Williams was the left tackle. He requested a trade when they brought in Orlando Brown. They didn't move him, and he went over to right tackle for the year, but now he's a free agent. And so I don't know exactly what he is looking at as far as, payment on the open market and free agency and that sort of thing. But there could be an opportunity with somebody like that where, he could potentially come over, fill that left side. There are a handful of other guys. Mekhi Becton is somebody from the Jets that is on the open market that, the Jets drafted him pretty high back in 2020, thinking that he was going to be a solid NFL caliber left tackle. And he's been injured quite a bit. And so, that could potentially be a project that Kansas City could look at. So there are other options that are out there for that specific position. But I understand what you're saying as far as the interior of the line. When you've got Humphrey and you've got Smith and then, of course, Tooney, if those guys, you're not able to keep them all together, then you've got, major issues long term. So right now they've got to figure out exactly what they're doing on the ends of the offensive line. But I do think that we can all agree that for the way that they have rebuilt this offensive line from 2 or 3 years ago to now, it's been impressive. They've got to do everything that they can to try to keep as much of that together.
it is the most important thing that they'll do. Even as much as I love the defense and as much as I think that was the reason that they won a Super Bowl this year, and I believe that wholeheartedly, the most important thing that they have to do for the next decade is make sure Patrick Mahomes is protected. We talked about this someday this week. If you'll remember, the one thing the Patriots never did was leave Tom Brady unprotected, right? In all of those years. And the one season he wasn't there, right, was because of an injury that happened so that is the most important thing the Chiefs will do over the next 10 years is make sure Patrick Mahomes is protected. And they've already shown us that, right? There's no position that they have invested more into than that position over the last 4 years now. Since the Buccaneers sort of exposed them, right, in that Super Bowl loss. So we know that that's what they'll prioritize. They may get into the draft. They may take a left tackle. And they will never do anything on the offensive line that makes me think, oh, that was a bad decision. I want you to think about the last 3 dynasties that we've seen historically. Patriots always had a good offensive line, right? Cowboys of the mid-90s, I think, was the other dynasty before that, had one of the best offensive lines in the history of football. And then this one, consistent, protecting the quarterback. No quarterback is good with pressure in his face all the time. And so that just we've seen that play. I mean, it is the oldest adage in football. You got to be good up front. You have to be good up front. If you're not good up front, you're not going to do what you need to do. And so they will attack that the most aggressively. I think that they clearly have that belief within the organization that that's where think about the biggest contracts they've given outside of Mahomes. It's Tooney. It's these tackles. They've traded draft capital to try and solve the problem. So they're going to continue to do that because it's so important for them to do that. So don't let that surprise you. And I would say don't ever be disappointed when you want a wide receiver or you want Chris Jones or you want all these things. It's like, no, what we're going to do is we're going to protect 15 before anything else that we do.
The only concern that I have, and I'm not ready to say that I would think that it was not the right decision. I don't want to go that far because we don't even know what they're going to do. But the only thing that would give me a little bit of pause in the draft would be if they drafted a left tackle in the first round and that left tackle was slated to start the season as left tackle. That would be the only thing that I would be a little bit hesitant on, because even if you're a first round draft pick, you're going, up against NFL defenses. You're going away from college and you could be a highly touted offensive lineman, but I think you're going to need a little bit of time to grow in that position. So what I would love to see, if they do decide to take a left tackle early in the draft, first round, second round, somewhere like that, if that person they feel like is the left tackle of the future for Kansas City, that's great. But I think they still also need a veteran or somebody in there. And maybe it's re-signing Donovan Smith again. I don't know exactly what that looks like. But having somebody in place that, you don't have to put a rookie in there right away at that very important position.
I think re-signing Donovan Smith can be the answer. I think it's the easiest answer.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's the best financial answer because we don't know what he's thinking in this situation. I talked about awkward transitions in this show, so please, again, bear with us. I do want to give you an update. So this one from KMBC, that of the victims at the Truman Medical Center, 5 of the 8 people who were shot have been discharged. 2 people in critical condition, 1 in the hospital but in stable condition. 3 of the 4 people who were there that were not shot have also been discharged. So what happens in these situations, you have the people shot and you have a whole lot of people trampled. And oftentimes trampling can do as much or more damage than anything. So a good update there. A lot of things will be happening. A lot of information will be coming today. We'll get you that information as it comes through. There are, I'm so proud of, reporters in these situations. So happy for the job that they do. Obviously, we're biased to that, but when everybody's starved for information, when everybody's wondering about their loved ones, these reporters are right there in the thick of it. Max Dutton, I'll give him a shout out. He was our reporter. I mean, he was 20 yards from where this happened when it happened, and he was right there giving on-the-ground information to us and to everybody else about what was happening. You don't get that information from officials for good reason, right, immediately, but you do from people at the scene. So, a big thanks to all those people. If you see your local reporter, maybe give them a pat on the back, because that's a tough situation for them to navigate too. But a good news on patience there. Hopefully, we get some more of that as we make our way through. We will pass that along, or any other information as we get it here on Sports Daily today. Let's come back, Tommy, and we will talk a little bit about the Shockers tonight. So Kevin Saul was not with us yesterday. He'll be with us Friday. Just, for those that missed him, that was totally just planned, a schedule conflict. Let's talk about the Shockers and what they have coming up tomorrow, because it is the beginning of a stretch of the season I think we're kind of excited about, which is interesting because if you just look at wins and losses, there hasn't been much to be excited about, but we'll get into that, Shocker fans, as we return. Want to mention a big giveaway we have here, though. So if you'd like to see some postseason college hoops, KFH and Taco Bell have your chance to win a trip for two to the College Hoops Championship Tournament in Kansas City. That's March 13th through the 16th to cheer on your favorite team. It includes 2 all-session tournament passes, 3 nights hotel accommodations. To enter, you can simply text TB BIG to the number 20357. If you want a complimentary breakfast burrito, just go to kfhradio.com, click on the events page, download the voucher, and then you can get a free breakfast burrito at any Wichita or surrounding Taco Bell locations, with the exception of in Hutchinson. Your chance to see the College Hoops Championship Tournament and snag a complimentary breakfast burrito from Taco Bell happens right here on KFH. We'll come back with some Shocker talk next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider, coming for the top of the next hour. Mornings here at KFH, the staff enjoys some delicious coffee, some Prairie Fire coffee. Always appreciate that. Whenever I'm in there for some of the national shifts on the weekend, which is when I'm usually in there, got Prairie Fire fired up. Always appreciate that. I'll have some Sunday when I'm in to do one of those shifts from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. You should be able to hear that all the way through here locally. I'll have to check the schedule on that. I can't remember when the Shockers play on Sunday. Actually, I can tell you because I've got it pulled up for tonight. But either way, I have some delicious Prairie Fire coffee for it. It's a big game for the Shockers tonight, Tommy, and Sunday, quite frankly. That's Charlotte. That's at 11 a.m. So you won't catch much of me. You'll catch just a little bit before the Charlotte game, maybe an hour or so. But it starts with East Carolina. So here's the challenge for Wichita State. This is where it gets interesting. We know they're capable, Tommy, of beating anybody in this league, home or road. Capable. They haven't been able to do it, though, hardly at all. They have 2 wins, right, in the league. We've seen them in most of these games. Now, both of those wins came at home. But recently on the road, we saw them lose a game they should not have lost at Tulsa. We saw them lose a game they very easily could have won. I won't say they should not have lost that one against Memphis. They have played South Florida very close on the road, who's been very good. They've played Florida Atlantic on the road, who's been very good. So when I see East Carolina and Charlotte, I see those as winnable games. In fact, I see every game left on the schedule, any game that Wichita State plays the remainder of this season as winnable games. So what gets interesting then, Tommy, is if every game they'll play is winnable, and I think that's absolutely fair, and a tip of the cap to the team, they do actually have to win them, which is what they have not been able to do.
Yeah, and of course, you have to just go back to the last time that these two teams played inside Coke Arena. And it was probably, and I mentioned it the other day, kind of when the bottom fell out. I think kind of rock bottom of the season for Wichita State.
Well, that or Tulsa, that or the 20-point beat down in the second half they took to Tulsa. Either one of those, both rock bottom.
Difference is that game was in Coke Arena, and it's East Carolina, and they're not a very good team, and it was 54-52, at home. It just really a bad showing for Wichita State when they played last. So they've got an opportunity to kind of redeem themselves a little bit and avenge that early loss at home against East Carolina. But you know what? I think that at this point, and we've talked about this schedule moving forward and the remaining games that they have in conference play, really what you're trying to do here is set the table for optimism moving forward and really try to set the table for optimism going into the conference tournament. I think that we both agree, and we've talked about it before, the level of talent that we believe that this team has, and we've watched them hang with the top teams in the conference on multiple occasions. It hasn't just been a one-off fluke where, maybe one game they were able to hang. No, it's been multiple games. Both times they played Florida Atlantic. Both times they played Memphis. They've hung around with these teams, and in a couple of those games had opportunities to actually win the ball games. So you feel, I think, optimistic about the talent level and the capability that this team has, but now you've got to actually put it into action. And if you can end this regular season on a high note and really, like, over the next 6 games, have strong showings in them. And, I think 5-1, something like that down the stretch. I think at that point you feel that much better about your chances in the conference tournament. And not only that, but just the seeding that you're going to get. I mean, keep in mind, if they falter down the stretch, they might have the talent to hang with these teams in the conference tournament, but their seeding is going to be so poor that it's going to be that much tougher. If they can improve where they're at getting into the conference tournament, of course, that's going to be super helpful.
Yeah, look, that's the point of it all, right? Is to overachieve now after some vast underachieving. And the good news is we think they can do it, but they have to do it. This is a big test to have to go to East Carolina tonight, right? They play at 6 and then turn around and play an early Sunday game is a difficult thing to do, especially on the road, no matter who you're playing. To go East Carolina, Charlotte on short rest, both of those games on the road, that is not easy. But guess what? That just means if that happened, you'd be staring at the greatest point of this Shocker season. So, the challenge is there. Embrace it. Go do the most difficult thing you've been asked to do, which is do that. I mean, we see it all the time. That's difficult for any team to do, no matter who they're playing. Go get it done. And try to create some momentum. Andrew asks us on our video stream, which, by the way, you'll always find on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, if there's any chance for an NIT bid for Wichita State. So obviously, if they won the American Athletic Conference tournament, they would get into the postseason. But any chance for other postseason play? I would say a slight chance. I think the NIT does consider potential draws, and Wichita State would obviously draw well. They know that. That tournament knows that. They'd need to win most of their remaining games. I would say they, at minimum, and it may not be enough, need to be a 500 team by the end of the year. I don't know. I would say it's a small chance. But that there are other postseason tournaments. I would love for this team to be able to play postseason basketball in any form or fashion. This is the perfect example of a team that would embrace one of those other tournaments, because it does feel like they're grooving a little bit. It is really a strange dynamic, Tommy, to feel that way. And I think everybody does, but they're not winning games. And so that's going to deflate if they don't start winning games. And we've talked about for a long time now, this week especially, this stretch of games they're playing. Honestly, the only game I'll give you, I mean, maybe you count UAB on the road. So of the 7, maybe there are 2. But I'm putting 5-2 at minimum here of what this team needs to finish down the stretch to carry any optimism. Again, who knows what happens in the conference tournament. But as far as games that we know will be played the rest of the way, I'm going to need at least 5-2.
Yeah, the road game at Charlotte this Sunday, is going to probably be a tough task for Wichita State. But 5-2 at the bare minimum, you get to 5-2. Let's just use that as an example. 5-2 to finish the regular season. You're looking at a 7-11 conference record, and you are 15-16 overall for the regular season. You get into the conference tournament. I think if you can win a couple of games there and get over 500, maybe the NIT would take a look at you. But there's no way that, if they finish the regular season under 500 and they stay under 500 in the conference tournament, that they'll end up in the NIT.
I wouldn't think so. And the criteria for those tournaments is wild, but maybe they can get into the CIB or whatever. I don't care what it is. Postseason basketball will be good for this team. And it will be good for Paul Mills, who is, taking some lumps as a first-year head coach in this conference. So the staff, everybody, it'd be great for everybody to get the opportunity to do that. And you can refocus. We've seen Shocker teams get behind runs like that in the past. We saw it with Marcus McDuffie in a year. Like, they really rallied behind him to just get him postseason basketball, and it was a cool thing to see. So, look, it's all out there. It starts tonight. You'll hear the game tonight with us. Let me get you the pregame time here. It'll start coverage at 5 o'clock over on KEYN. 5 o'clock. You know what? Maybe you will hear me on CBS Sports Radio. That's right. We've got Shockers on KEYN. 5 o'clock pregame coverage against East Carolina. Really excited about that. On KFH tonight, you've got the Jerome Tang radio show. Speaking of the Cats, we'll have our K-State insider, Tim Fitzgerald, joining us when we come back on Sports Daily.
NFL Mornings with Bob and Tom on 97.5 and 1240 KFH, Wichita's most listened to sports radio. Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
He's got all the insight of what you want to know and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
All right, welcome back in hour number 2 of Sports Daily. We do welcome in Tim Fitzgerald. Fitz, we have laid out the awkwardness of today to talk about things that are happening that aren't the tragedy that happened yesterday, but that's what we'll do. We'll get people updates as they come in on what happened at the parade yesterday. We have had some positive updates for some of the patients at the hospital this morning. No news in the investigation, and some other stories about players and other people helping in these moments, which is always great. But Fitz, it's a weird thing to do what we do today, but we'll do it.
Yeah, you know, I do a daily delivery video every day. That's why they're called daily. And I addressed this topic. and then we decided we weren't going to run it. And it wasn't really anything controversial, but it just felt out of place. And so we did another topic, and that video won't see the light of day. Not because it was, anything bad about it. It was basically the gist of it is we got to get back to being kind to each other. I think we've lost some of that in our society, but I'd prefer to talk sports, so I'm in on this.
Well, it's been a quiet week for Kansas State men's basketball. Haven't played since Saturday. They don't play again until this Saturday at home against TCU. But let's go back to last Saturday, Fitz. The Wildcats on the road in Provo to take on BYU, 72-66 final score as the Wildcats fall in that game. Big takeaways from, what you were able to notice from that game as BYU gets the win.
That game wasn't close. I mean, it was 17 points in the second half, and K-State started coming back and played with the type of urgency you need to play with for 40 minutes, but they did it for like 5 at the end of the game. And they did cut the lead down quite a bit. Then it just took one mistake, one breakdown on defense, and that's how fine of a line they had left themselves. They didn't have any room for error, and they had an error. So it was a nice comeback, but, in reality, that was not a competitive game. K-State, for the entire middle part of that game, the middle 30 minutes almost, was a much lesser team than BYU. And that BYU kind of is the opposite of Kansas State. They know exactly what they're trying to do. They value possessions, and they're not hyper athletic, but they don't do much wrong. Well, K-State's over here trying to, dunk and shoot a bunch of 3-pointers, and they just don't do it very efficiently. So that really exposed them. But they get BYU at home, and we'll see how, a team that hasn't played in many great environments of recent years likes to come into Manhattan, Kansas, because that'll be much different.
Fitz, we look at that game, and the final score was not indicative there of how BYU got them. So as we look at K-State, yes, they get the week off, but they also are rewarded with the Saturday turnaround and go on the road Monday. Which, if you're unaware of how difficult that is, I'll hand you Kansas the last couple of weeks and see how that's gone for them. It does, though, emphasize, I think, the importance of this game at home against TCU. I mean, they almost certainly have to have this one if their NCAA hopes are going to remain. You get it at home. You've had it on long rest. They can't lose this one. They've got to have it.
No, we had a long discussion about this very topic on the PowerCat podcast that went live this morning. They just don't have much room for error. They can't lose at home again. I mean, aside from the fact that if you want to get to the magical 9-9 in the conference that Jerome Tang has mentioned as kind of being you're in the tournament barrier. If you win your home games, you're there. But the problem is I'm going to be really blunt here. I think the value of beating Kansas 2 Mondays ago has been deflated a little bit. And I'm not sure it's had the impact that Jerome Tang and everyone else imagined. I'm not sure 9-9 and a loss in Kansas City gets them in at this point. And they're probably going to have to defend their home court and find one to steal on the road. And they're down to Texas and KU and Cincinnati, which might be the one they are after. Texas is that quick turnaround. They've got work to do. And losing at home is an absolute backbreaker at this point. You just can't make up that ground unless you want to go to Kansas City and win the dang thing.
It wasn't that long ago, I think maybe just a couple of weeks ago, that you and I were talking about the struggles that the Wildcats have had in the rebounding battle. I think it was 4 games in a row that they had lost the rebounding battle. Now we turn around and we look at the last 3 games. Kansas State has won the rebounding battle. The loss against Oklahoma State, the big Monday game against KU, and last weekend against BYU. Has that been, in your mind, a major focus from Jerome Tang and his staff to try to flip that script as we get further into conference play?
Yeah, it's amazing that they did fix that. They did get it going better, and they lost 2 of those games, and they barely won the 3rd one. So there's a lot more going on here. That was something that they felt like they could get fixed easily, and they have. And that while that isn't the entire solution, at least it improves you in one area. At the end of the day, this team, and I've been saying this over many weeks now, doesn't value the basketball. They don't value possessions. They're reckless with what they do, and they're not very precise in how they do it, from dribbling to passing to shooting the ball, and how they run their offense. And I think the lack of a true point guard has really caught up to this team. They've tried to cover it up, but now teams have figured out how they can pressure them and really take K-State out of what they want. Because with a good point guard, you can get into your stuff despite the pressure, and K-State just doesn't have that right now.
Fitz, I wonder if it doesn't go well and they don't make the tournament. What do you think will be the feel of things if they don't? I think it was, it's always been a possibility for this team. We knew that going into the year. But if they didn't, is it deflating at all to the momentum that Tang has going there if they don't make the tournament?
No, I don't think so, because basketball is so volatile right now, college basketball, how you can reinvent or lose your team. You look around college basketball, Missouri's going through a lot of the same stuff, even worse. Arkansas is struggling this year. Sometimes the transfer portal is magic and does incredible things, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. K-State missed on a couple point guards, both of whom they thought they had, and not only lost out on them, they lost out on them to conference foes. So it's like a double whammy. And then you lose a 6'10" future NBA guy that's taken off your roster. And then the guy that you did bring in to help supplement your guard play is out for the season in Quez Glover. So it's just had kind of this domino effect of bad things, major disruptions in what they thought their roster would be, and they're trying to do their best, but they're not entrenched enough as a program right now. They're still building from the ground up while trying to do the transfer portal. So their young players aren't quite ready. And as I mentioned, the transfer portal didn't work quite the way they wanted it to. And I think they're going to have more success this year, because I've seen a great deal of movement towards supporting the NILs at Kansas State and the Wildcat NIL in particular, and how it could really help out the program. And I think you're going to see more success with the portal this year.
What do we know about TCU? They're 2 games back of Houston in the Big 12, tied right now with BYU. They're 3-2 in their last 5, most recently beating West Virginia at home by 16 points. This is a team that, it seems like Jamie Dixon kind of has flying under the radar a little bit. I mean, I don't really feel like I've heard a ton about the Horned Frogs this year.
Yeah, because they've been an absolute roller coaster, really volatile in their performances, up and down, really good, impressive performances, and some real stinkers. And, if you go to the net ratings, and, they got the 4 different quadrants that teams are placed in, basically based on their value. K-State's got 4 home games, and only 2 of them are quad 1. TCU's not a quad 1 game, it's quad 2. So I thought it was really interesting. So they're not measuring up in those ratings as well, like K-State isn't. West Virginia is the other one as a quad 3. But I don't know what we're going to see from TCU Saturday morning at Brandwoods Coliseum. And I don't know what we're going to see from K-State, although they've been more consistent at home. They did lose 2 home games to go to Oklahoma. So this is going to be an interesting game to see how both teams respond. And somehow I think it's going to end up being a really close competitive game that might go to overtime. I don't know why I think that. It just seems to happen all the time for Kansas State.
There was a time, Fitz, I thought TCU was going to have a shot to win this league. I think highly of them. It will be fascinating to see the end of their season. I just don't. They have been so unpredictable in both directions. Maybe it's not even in both directions. I think what it is like every time they come and get one of their big wins, it surprises me a little bit, and it probably shouldn't in this league, but it does. That's why I'm holding out hope they can get a few of these wins, but it does seem unlikely.
Yeah, and the Dogs had some opinions on this, but
he doesn't like that slander is what he doesn't like.
Yeah, I know. they're a big fan of chasing frogs, apparently. They're hard to figure. They're one of the teams that really is hard to define in this conference, and it's kind of they and K-State are a little bit mystifying, and I can't quite understand how you can get to this point of the season and not really have the consistent effort that you need in this conference. And Jerome Tang will tell you the effort's been there. Look, I see effort in some ways. In other ways, I don't see enough focus to get wins in this league, because you have to be fairly unflinching. I mean, you just have to be as consistent over 40 minutes as almost possible. And that's not happened for either TCU or K-State.
Let's talk
right,
women.
Fitz.
Hey, let's
Go
talk
ahead,
women's
Tom.
basketball really quick. So Aoka Lee makes her return against Iowa
yeah.
State. The ladies lose that game last night. Where did things stand with the Wildcats? I know that it didn't seem like, from everything that I saw, that Aoka, is 100%. I mean, obviously coming back from that injury, and you could kind of tell that on the court. But I mean, I would imagine at least having her back in some capacity, is definitely a lift for the Wildcats.
Yeah, and I think they fell behind big time in the first half. So I think you saw them start to acclimate to having her back, and maybe she started to find some more comfort. I think the stat that jumped out at me the most was she only had 2 rebounds in regulation. I'm not sure what she ended up with, but she had 2 rebounds, and one of them was late in regulation. So that's not her. That's just not feeling 100%. But she played probably more minutes than they expected her to play, because it was such a competitive game. But right now, this thing going on with K-State and Iowa State, you could, if you had the crop judging team, probably has a rivalry right now, and they probably are really competitive. They probably have you match Iowa State and K-State up, there's going to be some heat, and they get after it, and that's what happened last night in Ames.
Of course it will. What do you have going at gopowercat.com for us, Fitz?
It's been an off week for us too. It's been a little bit slower. We've got some great VIP content on, looking forward to football season right now for our subscribers. And we're going to keep doing our YouTube productions as we kind of bend in that direction right now, because it's, that's kind of where the fan bases are right now. That's where the attention is with a lot of video stuff. So we've got the Big 12 Insiders going live at 1 p.m. on our YouTube channel.
At Life of Fitz on social media, gopowercat.com. Fitz, we appreciate it. Let's do it again next week.
Thanks for having the dogs on today.
Yeah, we appreciate them always, our furry friends. We will have, you can hear that podcast, by the way, on Odyssey. So there is going to be a media briefing on the parade at 10:30. Now, that's scheduled for 10:30. It could be later than that, although with the amount of time in between, I would suspect it's pretty close to on time. So bear with us. We're going to take a break here. We may flip this hour upside down a little bit so that we can bring you that briefing as it's happening live on the air. We're going to take a break. We're going to let Jad get a handle on that, get ready for that. We'll have another segment here so that we can come back and be able to carry that for you live. So bear with us as we sort out the technical details on that. But we do expect an update on things at 10:30, and we'll try to bring that to you live here on the air. So stick with us. We'll be back. More Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back to Sports Daily. We are going to bring you that news briefing live from Kansas City to get the latest on the parade shooting situation. It's scheduled for 10:30. We'll have a segment here that'll be a little brief, and then we'll come back and we'll just sort of have that for you as it comes. So bear with us as we work with these. I would imagine that the first briefing of the day is pretty on schedule, but those are typically more organized. So we should have that for you right around that time, but bear with us on that. So stay tuned. As we make our way there, Tommy, one other topic I think that was interesting yesterday is that Steve Wilks was fired from San Francisco. We talked about the greatest pressure in the Super Bowl falling probably on Mike Shanahan, and
Shanahan.
Wilks held God, Xavier Sneed, Mike Shanahan. Forgive my scatterbrain this morning, everybody. So Kyle Shanahan's, he's feeling it right now. There's no question. But Steve Wilks' defense held Kansas City to 19 points in regulation and one touchdown that came on a muffed special teams play. I don't think that Steve Wilks was the problem this year. There were players that publicly said they were not prepared for some final things that the Chiefs did there. But you got to understand, like, the Chiefs brought things out of the bag there that they've never brought out. How do you prepare for that? That's a part of what makes Andy Reid so great. That seems like that seems like a stretch. Kyle Shanahan saying, I felt pretty strongly this was a decision that was best for the organization. Somebody's got to go, I suppose, but man, it sure didn't seem like it deserved to be Steve Wilks.
Well, I don't think anybody had to go. I mean, I don't think that the result of the Super Bowl.
Only because the pressure, but it's only because the pressure is so high on Kyle Shanahan, isn't it? Like they fell short again.
Maybe, but again, I think that he could have gotten away with not making any changes and at least going into next season probably been okay. But man, I think that, I feel bad for Steve Wilks because he was clearly the fall guy in this. He didn't fumble the football. Christian McCaffrey did. He didn't muff the punt. That was the special teams unit. He didn't have the issues preparing the team with the overtime rules situation. That falls on Kyle Shanahan. All Steve Wilks did with his defense was really do a pretty good job limiting Kansas City offensively, especially in the first half of the Super Bowl. So, he was out after 1 year. I thought he put together a really solid defense, and Shanahan mentioned that it was more of a difference in philosophy moving forward. And I guess that if that's the way that it is, good luck to Shanahan and whoever he brings in, but I certainly don't feel like Steve Wilks deserved that.
No, I don't either. And when you get, so it's the same thing we saw with Buffalo, right? And it's unfortunate for all of these opposing parties that they're up against, this Chiefs dynasty, because, at other times we probably would have seen a San Francisco Super Bowl now. We probably would have seen a Buffalo Super Bowl by now. And it's just like you run into this buzzsaw, and it's wild to imagine that and what could possibly happen if these, dynasties, if this dynasty wasn't in place. But that's the reality of it. You just have to catch them that one time. And the 49ers had every opportunity in this game and in the last one they played in the Super Bowl. They just didn't make that one big play, and there's ramifications for it. Steve Wilks got a raw deal in Carolina too. I don't know that there's an opening for him, but I would bet you him being on the market is something people didn't expect was going to happen either. So where does he end up? I don't know, but the pressure's on there in San Francisco. There's no doubt about it. Their window's closing. They're going to have to pay Purdy. McCaffrey's getting older. Kittle's getting older. Like, can they keep Debo and Ayuk forever? Trent Williams is already old. Like, their little run here with no Super Bowls is going to get looked at pretty negatively, I would think, by the fan base. Okay, so we're right at the time we probably need to take this break to be back by 10:30. So let's do that. Again, we're going to expect an update from Kansas City officials on the shooting. So we're going to bring that to you live as it happens. We'll take a break now so that we're here right when it starts. We'll do that. Sports Daily coming right back. All right, welcome back in, everybody. All right, so what's happening here is we expect the news conference to begin anytime in Kansas City for an update from officials. So we are going to just sort of fill that time for you until we get that. We expect it to be on time as a scheduled news conference. So just hang with us here. Jad's going to get that for us as soon as he sees it, and we will take it live for you. So hang tight, Tommy, as we sit here and we can sort of, again, just wonder what in the world is going on that things like yesterday happened. I saw Trey Smith interviewed on Good Morning America this morning talking about just how, I mean, they were right there. The Chiefs coaches and players are right in the thick of it.
And I don't think I don't think I realized until just a few hours ago how close they actually were to all of this going down.
So Neil Jones works for KCTV. He's been there a long time. He actually had his reporting on CBS Evening News last night. And you can, in that story, and I don't know if this was an edit or if it was the actual gunshots as you're seeing basically the Fight for Your Right to Party song finishing up and players sort of exit. That's when you hear it. So, I don't know if that was the exit. There was another shot of him as he was doing a live shot. You can hear it in multiple places. It was a lot of shots, folks. Like, it wasn't just a couple. Obviously, 22 people are shot. It was rapid fire, very obviously. And when you see pictures of one of the likely guns recovered, that makes sense. But it was there. And so Trey Smith recounts it as, being in a closet, basically, with a bunch of other people. He picked up a kid, he said, and just ran in there. That's what I mean. Like those things where we, they're small bits of it and may not see it, but there were like 9 kids in Children's Mercy, either shot or trampled or whatever. Trey Smith grabbing a kid on his way to safety is heroic. There's so many moments of those that come out, and that's what will happen today, and it's good. We're probably going to learn more about victims, but we're going to hear a lot more accounts of heroism from everyday people put into that position when they absolutely were not expected to be, and it's awesome, and I love hearing that. Trey Smith said James Winchester was incredible in the moment in helping people. There was another kid in trouble. He gave him his WWE belt. You had seen that yesterday. You'd seen that Andy Reid was trying to comfort a young person. Like all of that stuff, those are the things that you focus on too, to remind us that, we collectively as people are good. bad actors that do these things are not. And so, shout out to everybody who helped somebody yesterday. Just, pick somebody up as they stumble, like anything anybody did. I love hearing those stories because those are the things to me that bring you out of a funk when you see it. It's a dark rabbit hole to get into.
And then the report and the confirmation of who the victim was, the fatality, and knowing her name is Lisa Lopez, knowing what she did for a living. She was on a local radio station in Kansas City, and so when I saw that, and I don't know her, I don't know her family or anything like that, but that did hit home for me, at least, for the profession that I'm in,
Sure.
and that we're all in this world. So, obviously continuing to think about her family and her coworkers, her friends, all of that, just with the influence that she had in the community, and hearing stories about that as well. Definitely sad.
Jad, I'm seeing it. Are you seeing it right now that we can take this live? I'm beginning to see this on social.
Yeah, they're starting to kind of filter down, and they're not. It doesn't look like they're getting underway just yet, but they're starting to filter out of the building and come down towards the where they've got all the microphones set up.
Okay, so bear with us for a second as we find this for you. We're going to bring this to you live as soon as we get it. So what'll happen this morning is a briefing. Okay, we've got it now. So we're going to take you live here to Kansas City.
Have available now, and the ongoing work being done in Kansas City in response to yesterday's shooting incident. Our condolences continue to go out to all those who have been impacted, including the decedent. You will have more information on that in our conversation that comes up shortly. A few things to note, and the chief will cover a bit later. If you have questions about property or other information relating to belongings that were left at Union Station, please call the city's 311 information line. Please do not call the police department's line in connection with that information. The other thing that we wanted to note were mental health resources for anyone who feels concerns from yesterday's events. Please call 988, and that's how we can connect you with services. We also will be making victim advocacy services available following this crisis. With that, we'll come back for questions after the police chief and the fire chief speak. With that, I'll turn it over to Police Chief Stacey Graves.
Police Chief Stacey Graves. As you know, yesterday we experienced a tragic event during a time that was meant for celebration. The law enforcement response was exemplary. Those in attendance also responded. They helped one another and even physically stopped a person who was believed to be involved in the incident. I want to thank the people who acted bravely yesterday alongside law enforcement, to include the Kansas City Fire Department. Your selfless act did not go unnoticed. Thank you, Kansas City. I'm angered by what occurred in our city yesterday, but I am also thankful for the response. Members of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, the Kansas City Fire Department, city officials, federal partners, and many others have worked around the clock investigating this incident. All of their hard work and dedication has allowed me the opportunity to provide you this update today. I want to thank the Attorney General, the Governor, the Mayor, and numerous other elected officials, as well as numerous chiefs of police for reaching out to me directly, offering support, assistance, to include federal resources to assist in this investigation. First and foremost, I want to stress that preliminary investigative findings have shown there was no nexus to terrorism or homegrown violent extremism. This appeared to be a dispute between several people that ended in gunfire. During the overnight hours, we learned there are 23 victims of yesterday's shooting. One of our victims, Elizabeth Galvin, 43 years old, died. We are still learning about her, but know that she is beloved by many. To her friends and family, we are with you, and we are working tirelessly to investigate her murder. The 22 victims' age range between 8 years old and 47 years old. At least half of our victims are under the age of 16. As mentioned yesterday, we have subjects detained, 2 of which are juveniles. We are working to determine the involvement of others. And it should be noted, we have recovered several firearms. This incident is still a very active investigation. We ask anyone in the vicinity of the shooting that directly witnessed the shooting incident, has any video of the shooting incident, or is a victim of the shooting who has not yet reported to police, please call this dedicated line, 816-413-3477. I know there are many more questions that you all want answers to that I may not have answered just yet. It's critical that we protect the integrity of this case so that we can bring justice to the victims, their families, and everyone else involved. It should also be noted we are also working closely with our Jackson County Prosecutor's Office.
Chief, not yet.
We're going to pass this on to Chief Grundison from the Fire Department.
Good morning. I'm Fire Chief Ross Grundison. Yesterday, Kansas City units, along with our mutual aid partners, treated a total of 22 victims of the shooting incident. We had 1 fatality that was on scene, 8 critical, 7 serious, and 6 patients with minor injuries. All the critical patients were transported off the scene within 10 minutes of our point of contact with them. We transported to Children's Mercy, University Health, and St. Luke's on the Plaza. KCFD had a plan in place, and we were ready to respond to an incident like this. At the time of the shooting, we had approximately 8 personnel from KCFD and KC Medical who were assisting us in the immediate area. Some of those members were within 40 feet of where the shooting took place. These members did not run for cover, but stayed on scene to treat and triage the injured while additional KCFD units ran to their assistance. I am very grateful and proud of the service of these crews that worked this terrible incident. They gave their all yesterday, like they do every day in this city, and again, put the public's lives above their own, and we are grateful for that. I also want to say thanks to all the mutual aid partners that we worked with on this incident. Very grateful for their assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Chief, I wanted to ask you about a comment you made yesterday, because you said this is not Kansas City. And you just mentioned that this was an argument, apparently, that escalated. We had a similar situation just happened right around the corner at Crown Center less than a month ago. Last year, we set a record for homicides in this community with 182. So isn't gun violence, in fact, very much a part of what we face here in Kansas City routinely?
We do face gun violence here in Kansas City. But my note of this is not Kansas City is we had likely 1 million people down in and around this celebration. To have the ability to have that many people in our downtown area with I don't want to minimize this event, but that's Kansas City. That is 1 million people that are able to come together for a celebration. Again, you have just a handful, or I don't have a specific number of actors in this that perpetrated the violence that played out.
Do you have arrests? Because my understanding, you can only hold these folks for so long before
Correct.
you charge them. Have you charged them yet?
We have not charged them yet. This is still under investigation. We do have 24 hours until we have to either file charges or release them.
So
And
today.
again, we are working closely with the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office to present the most successful case for prosecution.
Is there issues with linking them to the actual shooting? Do you have enough evidence at this point to make the arrest?
So some of those questions I'm not able to give a direct answer just because I want to protect the integrity of this investigation. My focus right now and what is most important to us is to make sure that everything in this case is presented for successful prosecution. So some of those questions, I'm hesitant to.
I think the answer is she's not
Hold on
answering
a
it.
second, Mr. Mayor. It seems like we are so many hours from the shooting, and at this point, you're not announcing an arrest. I just don't understand.
We have subjects that are detained, like I said earlier. That is under investigation. We have detectives that have worked overnight and through the night that are still upstairs right now working with our Jackson County Prosecutor's Office for the furtherance of this investigation. That we have all intentions of presenting charges.
I understand. The other thing I wanted to ask you about the individuals, were they part of a gang? Was this some kind of gang crew situation?
You know, the relationship between the subjects involved, that's still under investigation.
Chief, you're good. You're good. Go ahead. Go after the lady, please. You're good. Go.
For the 3 suspects or the 3 people you currently have in custody, were they known to Kansas City Police prior to this, or any federal law enforcement or other law enforcement?
That is also under investigation.
Chief, can you elaborate?
Locations where there's more than one location where the shootings took place, correct? Can you tell us that?
Initial reports were that there was more than one location. It really is. That's not the case. It was mostly on the west side of Union Station. I had another question.
You made it sound like you're not sure at this point how many people may have been involved. Does that mean there are potentially more shooters out in the open right now?
What that is, if I could clarify that, is that we are not closing the door and giving direct numbers on this. This is still an active investigation. We are still asking the public that if anyone if anyone witnessed the shooting directly, to still contact police. We want to make sure that anyone that was responsible for yesterday is brought to justice.
Can you elaborate?
Could you tell us again the name of the victim?
Elizabeth Galvin.
And how old is she?
She's 43.
43. Okay, and what exact time did the shooting when was that reported, and where exactly did it happen?
It was approximately, I believe, maybe 1:50 p.m. I'm not completely sure on exactly when the shots were fired, but it was at the conclusion of the celebration rally. Yes, sir.
Chief, can you elaborate at all on the firearms that were recovered on the scene?
Right now, I am not going to elaborate on that just yet. There were several firearms that were recovered.
Would minors have been able to legally hold on?
Just a second. What was your question?
Is the ATF helping you?
We have engaged our federal partners. Kansas City, Missouri Police Department has a great relationship with our federal partners. We have historically, and they have offered all of their assistance to whatever we need in this.
Would minors have been able to legally possess these weapons if they were legally obtained somehow? Would a minor be able to have that weapon?
Minors should not be in possession of weapons.
One of the weapons.
We'll save that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was watching local news. You were talking about a high-powered weapon.
Yep.
Juvenile.
Yep.
People shouldn't have. Is that something that was a high-powered weapon used in this incident?
I think the chief explained right now there's still an investigation as to the firearms. Firearms have been retrieved, and then we'll learn more about it. To the extent that I was speaking towards it, it was from listening to sounds of gunfire, both in person and certainly in connection with what I have since seen in video as well. But we'll have all that information as soon as possible. That's being investigated with the firearms. One second, go ahead.
I know you haven't said so, but there have been some pictures shown of like an AR or something to that effect. If there's a long
all right, let's go ahead and come on back here. You're getting more specific questions there. They're not going to get answers to those questions, just a little inside baseball. They've got to present. So the arrests have been made of these people. Until they charge them, they're not going to say anything. Typically, doesn't mean that people shouldn't ask. They should. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just, it was a transitional point there as I think we have a spot where we can just sort of recap for you what's gone on there. So we know now that the victim number is to 23, and we know that those victims' age range from 8 to 47. Half of the victims here are under the age of 16. Now, we don't know, how many of those victims were involved or not involved or those kinds of things. Again, as long as they're investigating and before they present charges, some of that information is just not going to happen, but it probably will today. At some point, we'll get some of the information and it will be out there. The new information, I think, Tommy, that is the most relevant to us is that this was a dispute between two parties and not something terroristic or sinister. It was some sort of dispute. That's why you heard a lot of questions about gangs and gang violence and that sort of thing. And that 2 of the arrests are of juveniles. So, it sounds like it was a dispute among young people. And that's to me as sad as anything, maybe not as sad, but very sad that you're in situations like this where young people are shooting at each other, and it spills over into the public. And that's the frightening thing, I think, for all of us. So more of those details will come probably later today, probably later this afternoon. As you heard, the technicalities of it, they have to charge these people before 24 hours is up. They will have charges presented. They just want to make sure their case is a case they can actually win. And I think it's easy to get impatient, but they do have a job to do, and they do have to follow the law. And the law says you don't present cases you don't think you can win. Any prosecutor in the world will tell you that. So we'll probably get a little more of that information, names, those types of things. Maybe not names if they're juveniles. We'll see. But that'll come later this afternoon.
Yeah, we're in a world now where it wasn't that long ago when something like this would happen that the first thing that jumped to everybody's mind was some kind of terrorism, and somebody from another country, doing something to hurt the citizens of this country. And we're in a world now where that's not really as much of a case anymore.
Well,
it's
it's
still
it's
there.
a threat.
It's still there,
Yeah.
but now it's, and this is the way that it's kind of morphed into, where we're killing each other, we're shooting each other, and
I don't like when we hear this isn't a terroristic threat. Look, anybody that has the intent to shoot at people in a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people,
yeah,
that incites terror. So you can call it what you want, but it is the same effect essentially. It's not targeted, I think, but it is terroristic. It incites terror.
Sure.
By definition, that's what it is. So it's just like, look, we have a problem, whatever the root of it is, that people are able to go to a parade and shoot at each other, especially young people. That's heartbreaking. That's tragic. Like, if everybody could just set aside agendas, and you would be stunned to see some of the messages and emails we get about agendas when things like this happen. Like, there should be no agenda that we need to stop young people from shooting at each other in crowds of hundreds of thousands of people with high-powered weapons. There's no agenda there. That's the truth. Now, what the solution is what needs to be worked on, but we can't sort through our own crappy political agendas to get there. And it's so stupid and ridiculous. But, the people that are out there trying to help and trying to do these things to help young people, empower those people. I go back to the Jackie Robinson statue on a day where young people in Wichita shot and killed each other. Like, let's empower the people trying to help these young people make better choices. Let's start there. How about that? And see where that takes us. But stop with the, it's rinse, wash, and repeat. Whichever agenda somebody wants to push out there, they're going to go right there immediately. And that's just so counterproductive. Like, let's figure this thing out.
And, one of the questions that came out of that press conference that we just carried, one of the reporters asking the police chief, who mentioned this is not Kansas City, and about how there's been a lot of gun violence in that city and homicides and, things like that. It's not just Kansas City. It's everywhere. It happens in Wichita.
Yeah.
It happens here in our own community. Now, we don't have
Sure.
as many people in Wichita as we do in Kansas City. Doesn't mean that gun violence doesn't exist here. It absolutely does. And it exists among young people. It exists among, juveniles in that regard. Happens far too often everywhere, not just in Kansas City. You don't have, a massive group of hundreds of thousands of people all coming together in one place in Wichita like you did in Kansas City, but it still happens here. And so it's one of those situations where it's, you can't turn a blind eye to it. You can't just say, oh, well, that's there. It doesn't happen here. It happens everywhere. It happens absolutely everywhere. And so this is not just a, one city situation or one city problem. This is something that clearly has got to be addressed everywhere. And I'm not smart enough to know the total ins and outs of the answers to all of it, but I do know that,
the problem is there's gray
Yeah.
area involved, and people refuse to get into the gray area,
Mhm.
right? Like, these violent things that happen are symptoms of mental health issues, which become symptoms because of, social media and pop culture and all the things where we just normalized shooting at people. They are gun issues. They are, gang issues. They're crime issues. They're all these issues. And everyone wants to pick one of those things and pretend like that's going to fix it. But that's of course not going to fix it. Young people are stupid. Okay, we were all stupid when we were young. Young people don't truly understand consequence. Our brains, like, scientifically don't work that way. Let's empower young people to make better decisions. I'm just heartbroken by all of this. Like, from the perpetrators to the victims to the, the community, every bit of it is just so dang sad and demoralizing. But again, focus on the heroes here, and hopefully that'll lift your spirits. We'll have coverage on this throughout the day on the Odyssey family of networks here, on local television with us at KWCH. We'll get you covered on it on the latest. You'll get more information later this afternoon. We'll come back. We'll wrap up Sports Daily right after this.
Race to savings right now at Menards. Get the comfort and support you'd expect from a new mattress with Serta. Find the perfect mattress that fits your size and firmness needs. The Serta Perfect Sleeper Sarlington mattress provides cool, contouring comfort and relief from pressure points. Don't sleep on this deal and pick up a queen today for $739 at Menards. Price is good through February 18th. See store for details.
Save big money at Menards.
Wake up. Breakfast. And Nature Made vitamins. Whatever your morning sounds like, Nature Made fits right in. Whether you're looking for vitamin C or a multivitamin to get key nutrients, we've got you covered. Now that's a good morning. We take care of you so you can take on your day. Start your day with Nature Made, the #1 pharmacist-recommended vitamin and supplement brand. Based on a survey of pharmacists who recommend branded vitamins and supplements.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
What makes you so different than the rest of us?
We ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Tell me more.
Our investment counselors focus on service over sales.
All right, that's it for us. Very unfortunate last 24 hours or so. Hang in there, everybody. Look to the heroes in these deals. You've got Shocker basketball tonight on KEYN. That pregame coverage begins at 5 for a 6 o'clock tip. You've got the Jerome Tang radio show at 7 o'clock here on KFH. Should time out to where you can listen to both. Thanks for hanging with us today, everybody. You can also listen to anything tonight on the Odyssey app. We'll be back tomorrow with more Sports Daily.